All right, so let's use this setup that we came up with in order to answer questions. There's 6 of them. Let's go through, starting with 1. Which one of the following is a complete and accurate list of the children who must be among those assigned to shared lockers? Don't look at the answers for a second. I know you may have already tried this game, but if you haven't tried it or if you've forgotten what the right answer is, don't look at the answers for a second. What they want to know is who has to be in a shared locker. We've already talked about this. We already figured out who has to be in a shared locker. We know Juan up front by the rules is in a shared locker, but we also know that Nita and Trisha are going to be in shared lockers. And remember, again, the reason is because we know from our distribution that there are 2 shared lockers, and we know that every one of those shared lockers has to have a girl in it, exactly one girl, okay, one girl and one boy. So in one of the shared lockers, it's going to have to be Nita or Trisha, and in the other shared locker is going to have to be Nita or Trisha. And the reason is because there's only 3 girls, and Rachel is not in a shared locker. Remember, Rachel has to be by herself, and so Nita and Trisha are the only 2 girls who are left in order to fill the girl spot in those 2 shared lockers. So when we look for the complete and accurate list of children who must be in there, we know it should include Juan, we know it should include Nita, and we know it should include Trisha. And that's what answer choice B says. Okay, so with our setup, that's a relatively easy question. Let's go to 2. If Trisha is assigned to locker 3 and Mark alone is assigned to locker 1, which one of the following must be true? All right, so now they are giving us some particular information that we need to evaluate. And I just want to move this down so I have a little bit of more room. So let's move this down here. Okay, perfect. Now, let's do what they told us, but let's do it in blue so that we can quickly, we know that it's just for this question and we can get rid of it afterwards. So they want to put Trisha in win locker 3. All right, so we'll put Trisha here. And so Fred and Trisha are together in 3 in a shared locker. And then they say that Mark alone is assigned to locker 1. Okay, so we put Mark in to locker 1. And then they say which one of the following must be true. Now again, let's just go, forget about the answer choices for a second because it's a must be true question. There's something that we should be able to figure out. Let's go ahead and figure that out. Now remember, they said that Mark was alone here. Okay, so that's full. And this is full because these 2 are here together. So let's just to make it very clear to ourselves. Here we go. And Mark is by himself. Okay? Now, what else jumps out at you? Well, where could the other shared locker go? That's something we know something about, right? Who's going to, first of all, who's going to be in the other shared locker? Well, it's always going to be Juan. And before we had said that it's either going to be Nita or Trisha, but now we see that Trisha is in a shared locker with Fred. So inside the shared locker with Juan is going to have to be Nita. Okay, so we know that Juan and Nita are going to be in a shared, are going to share a locker. Where can that locker be placed? Well, could it be placed in 2? No. Why? Because it would be next to Trisha. Remember, Nita and Trisha cannot be next to each other, right? That's what the 2 bottom rules say. Okay, so by the same reasoning, they can't be in 4 either. The shared locker with Juan and Nita cannot be in 4 either because that would put Nita next to Trisha and that's not allowed. So we know where Juan and Nita are going to go, okay? They are going to have to go Juan and Nita are going to have to go here in their shared locker, right? And so we figured out something that must be true. Juan and Nita must be in locker 5. Let's see, once you do some work and you get an answer that could be an answer, or you get some work that could be an answer, let's just check and see whether they give it to us. So something that says like Juan and Nita are in 5, and answer choice B indeed says that Juan is assigned to locker 5, which is something that must be true as we just figured out. Okay, so I think you guys get this one. It's relatively straightforward. Don't want to waste too much time on it. Let's take what we just did off the board and go to number 3. If the 4 boys are assigned to consecutively numbered lockers and Juan is assigned to locker 5, which one of the following is a complete and accurate list of lockers, each of which cannot be a shared locker? Okay? So Juan's here, and we know that Juan is there with Nita or Trisha. Okay? So that's what they gave us. But they also gave us that the four boys are assigned to consecutively numbered lockers, which means that they're right next to each other. Okay, so Fred is in 3 and Juan is in 5. That leaves two boys, sorry, Mark and Paul. And we don't know whether it's going to be Mark coming in locker 2 and then Paul in locker 4, or Paul in locker 2 and Mark in locker 4. So we'll do it like that. They're basically dual options, right? In spots 2 and 4 for Mark and Paul. Um, and now we need to think about whether there's anything else we know, or otherwise, if there isn't, then we'll go to the answer choices and we'll try to figure out which one of those answer choices is going to create a problem so that it cannot be true. Uh, Remember, so I'm just looking at it and I'm trying to think about what kind of rules I know or what kind of rules they gave me that could be useful to help me figure the rest of this out. And one thing that jumps out is, well, this space is still empty, okay? And by the rules, which say that each locker must be assigned to either one or two children, that's not allowable. Somebody has to go there, okay? But all four of the boys have already been assigned to 2, 3, 4, 5, even though we don't know whether it's going to be Mark in 2 and Paul in 4 or Paul in 2 and Mark in 4. We know that the boys are used up in lockers 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there are no boys to go in locker 1. Okay? So if there are no boys to go in locker 1, that means that locker 1 cannot be a shared locker because a shared locker requires a boy and a girl. Okay? So locker 1 is just going to be one person using that locker all by herself. We know it's a girl because there are no boys left over. Now let's combine that with the knowledge of which girls were going to be in shared lockers and which girls were going to be by themselves, because this is going to be a girl by herself. And we already knew that Nita and Trisha are going to be in shared lockers, right? And Rachel is the only girl who can be by herself. So since 1 requires a girl by herself, it has to be Rachel, okay? Now, I said a mouthful there, so you can always pause it, think about it yourself, or pause it and rewind it and listen to it again. Hopefully the explanation is clear. And again, in one sentence, as quickly as I can say it, it's because 1 requires a girl by herself, because there are no boys to go in 1, so it can't be a shared locker. So because the boys are all used up, we know that it's going to be a girl by herself. And the only girl that's allowed to be by herself is Rachel. So that's how we know that Rachel's going to be in locker 1. And now who's left over? Well, Nita or Trisha. Whichever one doesn't get used up in 5 here is going to go somewhere, either in 2 or 3, right? Can't go in 4 because it would be next to the other shared locker, and we know that they can't be next to each other. Nita and Trisha cannot be next to each other. So one of them is going to go in either 2 or 3, all right? So which one cannot be a shared locker is what they want. And we know that 1 cannot be a shared locker, and we know that 4 also cannot be a shared locker. So they will actually want a complete and accurate list which cannot be shared. So we said 1 and 4 cannot be shared, so that's answer choice D. And this is a little bit more of a difficult question. We had to go through all the analysis, then we had to remind ourselves of what it was they were asking us, and then we had to come up with a list and pick the answer that gave us that complete and accurate list. And again, because 1 and 4 cannot be shared, that's our list, and the answer choice is D. Okay? So a little bit harder question, and we expect them to get harder as we go along. So let us move on to number 4. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and do number 4 in this video. I think we have time, and then we'll see if we can do the other 2 in the next video. So this one says, number 4 says, once Rachel has been assigned to a locker, what is the maximum number of different lockers, each of which could be the locker to which Juan is assigned? So what they're saying is, once you assign Rachel to a locker, how many different places can you then put Juan? Okay? And you'll notice they don't tell us which locker. So they don't say, like, once Rachel is assigned to locker 1, or if Rachel is assigned to locker 2. Okay? So we like logically, we would technically have to think about wherever we put Rachel, okay, how many places could Juan go? Like if we put Rachel in one, how many places could Juan go? And then if we put Rachel in two, how many places could Juan go? And so on all the way through. And then we'd have to pick the placement for Rachel that produces the maximum amount of different places for Juan, and then that the number of places for Juan in that instance would be our answer. Okay? Um, but really, practically on the test, you probably would just pick a spot for Rachel. All right, so let's just say Rachel. And then think about, given that one placement, that particular placement for Rachel, how many different places could Juan go? All right, and if it seems like that would be the maximum no matter where you put Rachel, then you would just pick that as your answer. So hopefully what I just said makes sense and didn't confuse you. Let's put Rachel in one then and see how many different places could Juan go. So remember, Rachel's by herself. Okay, so if we put Rachel in one, it looks like Juan could go in two. Juan cannot go in three because Juan has to be in a shared locker with a girl, and Fred is a man, so or a boy. So Juan could go in two, Juan could go in four, or Juan could go in five. So it looks like if we put Rachel in one, then there are three places where Juan could go. And what I was just saying was that technically then you would have to, you can't know for sure just by trying one instance where Rachel is in one that, the maximum number of places that Juan could go once we place Rachel is three. Theoretically, you would have to try this and then say, is there any way I could get to four, for example? Is there any way that I could place Rachel and then have four options for where Juan goes? And that provides us really the way to think about this question logically. Let me stop this.